Hello. So I am back. Page 8 of the instructions is where you're going to find your border, flange, and back. So the border is the red with the flowers. Okay, that's what we're using here. And you needed 2 pieces cut 1.5 by 16.5 and 2 pieces cut 1.5 by 18.5. And if you remember correctly, I told you just to cut the 20 inches. All right, off of that fat 1/8 and leave it. We'll trim it down to the 16 and the 18.5 after we quilt it. And then you can kind of move it around and place it. I think it's better to do that. So you have 4 of them. All right, to go along with that, I have pre-cut my batting. It's approximately 19 inches. I use the Kimberbell batting, which is really thin. So you would want your batting, you know, at least 19, 20 inches or so. I mean, because look, you're only looking at 16.5 and 18.5. So 19 inches should be plenty for us to get the strips that we need. And of course, we're doing 4. We're doing 2 sides and the top and bottom of this inner border, which is the red. All right, so my strips are cut about 1 1/8 wide. So just a little bit wider than an inch. All right, and I did 4 of them. Now, what I also did was I went to my clear blue tiles and I got the Border Quilting design, and the Border Quilting design on clear blue tiles is the loops. And that's what I've been using the scrolls. So I'm going to have loops on these. All right, and again, I'm going to do the quilting in the white. All right. And we'll see what it looks like. Now, my hoop, I can open up a 1 by 10 inch quilting design. If you can only open a 1 by 7 or a 1 by 5, you just have to hoop it more times. But you're not going to cut these. All right, I'm going to show you what we can do without cutting them. All right. So, I was also able to load all 4 designs up, so I could do all 4 strips at the same time in my hoop. All right, so if I switch over, let's see what we see over here. Okay, so right now you're not seeing anything, but if I turn you around, and I know it'll kind of flash a little bit, but you can see I have 4 strips up there to do some loops. So that's what's going to happen with mine. And remember, like I said, I am using the clear blue tiles. I did not buy this quilting design. And we're going to see how it goes. So I am going to stitch number 1 of the embroidery file, which is going to show me where to place my batting. All right. So I'm just going to hit start. And of course, I joined my 4 designs together and color sorted, so it's going to do all 4 rectangles for me in the order that I place them on my screen. So of course it's doing the first, it's going to do this one, and then I think it's going to bounce over to the right hand side and do that one, and then the one next to it, and then probably all the way back over here to the left hand side. So here is where we are going to place our batting. And again, I'm doing everything in white, so I apologize if you can't see it. So it's going to do these 4 like skyscrapers here on my stabilizer so that I know where to put my batting. So we'll return when it is done doing our 4. Okay, so you can see I now have my batting laying over those rectangles, right? And I have all of them covered up, because my batting is just slightly bigger than those placement lines. So the next step is to actually tack the batting down. So again, it's going to tack this one first. Now, you can tape the batting at the top and bottom if you choose. I actually slowed my machine down because I'm going to watch this all stitch on here. And I think it's going to be just fine. It's not bouncing all over the place or anything. And you can see that my batting is just slightly bigger than the stitch line. So it's not that bad at all. And I have the extra batting here. If you look, I have it hanging off the front, okay, of the hoop. And that's what's going to happen when I actually go to lay my fabric down as well. So it's going around the batting twice, just like it normally does. And again, as it went over to this last one, all I'm doing is holding it here at the bottom. As it comes down to tack this down, I just wanted to catch the edge. So it's going to go around this one twice. I'll speed it up just a little bit here. And again, I'm using my white thread and my white bobbin. And I'm going to slow it back down. Almost done, because then it should come to this one next to it. And again, I just want to make sure that my batting is just slightly getting caught. Because remember I told you I cut it just a little bit more than an inch. I did like 1 1/8 inches. Alright, so it tacked it down. It's going to go all the way around it again. And then it's going to come all the way over here to the left and tack that one down. Alright. I think this one is doing just fine. I'm just barely catching just a little bit of this one side, but it's no big deal because once I put my fabric down on top of it, that'll hold everything down in place. So if you think you have a little extra that you want to trim off next to the stitch lines, that would be your next step, because if you cut your batting, let's say 2 inches, you know, or 1.5 inches, you definitely want to trim the batting down, but only on the 2 sides, right? Only on these long sides. Don't trim the batting, you know, at the top and at the bottom yet. We'll wait till after we're all done quilting the whole strip, and then we'll trim those up as needed. All right. So our next step, it's going to actually stitch where we want to place our fabric, which is 1/4 inch away from all the way around. Now, this particular design is the block by block, and it is physically going to do a rectangle all the way around. All right, so you're going to get a stitch at the top and a stitch at the bottom. So it's just going to be about 1/4 inch bigger than what's here right now. And I think we're going to be okay. What'll happen is when we go to do the next step, this down here, We might just have to scoot it up just a little bit if the 1/4 inch takes up space and we can't lay down the next, set of quilting that we need to do. So see how it's, going about a 1/4 inch away on the side. So that's telling us where to place our fabric. So it's going to do this for all 4, right? Our inner and outer borders. And that's because I was able to load them all up in one hoop. Because again, I'm trying to save some stabilizer. And if you can only do 2 in your hoop, then just do 2. And just treat like the first 2 as like the 16.5 inches and the second 2 as the 18.5s. I mean, you're probably going to quilt them all around the same length, almost the length that they are, at least like 19 to 20 inches. And you definitely don't need that much, so that's good. You're going to have extra. And you're going to trim it down to size, but it also will help you, like maybe you want to position it a little bit so that you get, a complete like swirl into the quilt pattern before you get to the corner. All right, it's doing the very last one for placement of fabric. So the 1/4 inch lines are just 1/4 inch on the sides. It went over the same line at the bottom and the top of my rectangles. So the horizontal lines matched exactly with where the fabric was to begin with. All right, so our next thing is to lay our fabric down. So when you lay your fabric down, you want to make sure that you have those sides covered up, and I'm going to put a little bit of extra at the top, like, a 1/4 inch or so. And I'm going to line it up as close to those lines that I can. And you can see when you do this, your fabric really likes to hug on to that batting underneath. So it's highly unlikely that the fabric is going to move. I will tell you the other thing I did with these strips is that I did cut off the selvage edge, so I wouldn't have to worry about starting it or getting that caught in something I didn't want it to be caught in. So I already removed my selvages, just for my own safety later, so I don't forget that they were there, and then I ended up sewing it into the seam, and then now I have to take it apart. So I already trimmed them off. So all I'm doing again is I'm just lining up my fabric strips right along that stitch that it just did, laying them right on top the batting. All right. And the next step it's going to do is only going to do these really long vertical lines on each side, on the long side of the fabric, and that's going to base that fabric down in place. All right, so here we go. And I'm doing it in white. And remember, this basting stitch should be in your seam. So you're really not going to see that stitch when you go to piece this all together. So it's just basting down that fabric. So the fabric kind of just stays still. And when it does the quilting. So that is no problem there. I think that worked out pretty good. They're going to constantly go in the same order as I laid them down on the hoop in the first place. I'm just holding the fabric close to the batting as it goes back up the column, just so that I can catch that other edge. Because sometimes the batting's a little poofy and it's going to hold up the fabric, and you might not catch it all the way down. So we're just stitching up just on the right and left hand sides of all 4 strips. And again, these are our inner borders. So they're gonna finish at 1 inch wide, but we start out with 1.5 inches because we're gonna have a 1/4 inch seam allowance on both sides of the strip. And again, you know, I'm stitching this in white, and I'm also going to stitch my quilting in white. I still think that's the right thing to do, as I'm just going to make it all consistent. So once it's done this last strip, the next piece to do now is to actually do the quilting in all 4 strips. All right, so this is loops. It is on the clear blue tiles, USB that we received, and it's the border that they have. So it's called Borders block by block hoop loops. All right, so here we go. We're going to start doing our quilting. You can see it's just doing little loops all the way down the strip. Now it's going to do the loops on all 4 strips, and then we will be done with half of the strip. Alright, so I'll return when the quilting's done, and I'll show you what our next step is so that we can continue quilting our design. Okay, so I don't know if you can see this or not, but it's just to finish quilting my loops. Alright, down all 4. Can you see that? Alright. So I'm going to run this design again, right? So I'm not going to change anything there. But what I will do is I'm going to actually loosen my hoop. And I'm going to trim my stabilizer away. And I'm going to show you what I like to do. I want to flip all 4 of those up. All right. And then right here at the bottom, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take my scissors here, and I'm going to trim this all the way across. Now what I have left here is the one that I just did because I just slid it down. All right. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this all the way through, and I'm now going to cut these off at the top, because I actually need to re-hoop and finish quilting these particular items. Now, what I don't like to do is I don't really like to cut them apart. If I leave them in the same order, it's going to stitch them the same distance apart. I'm doing the same design again. I'm just doing it on a brand new piece of stabilizer. So I'm going to line up my stabilizer again in my hoop. All right, I'm going to tighten up my hoop. And I have, where'd they go? Magnets that fit on my hoop. And not that the magnets do anything, I am still using stabilizer. Right? I am still hooping that stabilizer and everything. The magnets just help it just hold it a little bit better since I'm only using stabilizer. And now what I'm going to do, I am just going to hit start, and it's going to do the 4 placement lines again for where to place my batting. All right? So you can see here's my 4 strips. Now what I think I'm going to do now is I'm going to come in here really careful, and I'm going to cut away this extra stabilizer here right beyond all the batting, because I want to get my placement really good with these next strips. So you can see it's just doing where to place the batting again. And I am just cleaning up the extra stabilizer off the bottom of my strips. I'm folding my strips up and then I'm just trimming close. But I'm not cutting any of the stitch lines. I'm not cutting the batting. I'm not cutting my fabric. I'm just trying to remove just a little bit more of this stabilizer that's down here. Okay. So it's on number 3 of the placement. And you can see right here, see how I folded these over. And if you look at the back of them, basically I trimmed the stabilizer pretty close to where the bottom, where it finished stitching all of these down. And I'm just going to keep folding these up because that's basically what's going to happen is you want them folded up kind of out of the way anyway. And then once this last placement line is done, then we're going to lay this one down on top. But we're going to start it at the very top of these rectangles that we have here, the skyscrapers, so to speak. Alright, so now it's basically your next step is to place your batting down, right? Yeah, but this time, I left my batting long. I didn't trim it short. So I'm going to take this and I'm just going to slide it underneath there. And what I want to do is I want to get these stitch lines for where my batting goes lined up. And usually if you line up 1 or 2 of these, the others are going to be lined up as well, because I left all these together stabilizer wise, so they're going to be very close. Now what you can do if you want is we can put tape up here and we can tape them down if you'd like to do that. The other thing that you can do is take tape and take small pieces of tape, like a piece of tape that will fit in between each one of the so I can put a piece of tape here on the stabilizer and put a piece in between each of these on the stabilizer and use that to tack them down at the top right now as soon as I get them in place. And then you can put tape on the bottom if you want, right? After you lay down the batting, if you want to hold the batting in place. You can watch it like I did the first time. And I just like to put my machine down on low. So if it does skip or it's not completely lined up, I can stop it and back it up. All right, so you can do it any way that you're the most comfortable, you know, in doing this. So what our objective here is to actually finish quilting the other half, basically, of all of these borders, because I'm doing all 4 at once. Now, if you're only doing 2, then you're just lining up 2 of them. And then you just have to do it again after that. So I'm going to line these up. And that's basically where I want that batting to be. I'm going to kind of tack that in place. I think these are all just falling in place pretty nicely. All right. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold down my batting and make sure my batting covers up, right, that stitch. It told me where to place the batting, right? It stitched it all out for me. So all I want to pull down in front of me is my batting. All right, I don't want to pull the fabric down. I want to leave this fabric tucked up here. And fold it up really nice at the top, okay? And I'm laying these all down here. And I think they're placed pretty good. But like I did the first time, I will probably turn it down, speed down. I'm going to move my hoop back where it needs to go to start. And then I see it. It's going to start in this corner and it's going to go across and down. So I just need to make sure it doesn't catch this red fabric here. So if you want to scoot your red up just a little bit so it doesn't catch it, you can. So I'm going to hit start. And I'm just catching the edge of this batting, which is basically what we want to do. Because remember, I didn't oversize my batting. If you oversize, then you don't have to worry about it as much because you would just be trimming the batting away. Okay, so it's going to go across it twice, right? It's going to go around twice. So here, I'll turn it up. We'll let it go around twice before we get to the next piece. And I'm just basically watching this, right? I'm watching how it's stitching and everything like that. I'm going to turn my speed down as we get ready to jump over to the next one. And I'm just pulling that red back. I don't want the red to get caught in. Coming all the way down the batting, going to go across the bottom again, going all the way back up. And all I'm doing is making sure I have my fabric pulled up here. I don't want it to get caught underneath. So once it's past that, I'm going to turn it up, let it do that one. Now, if you cut the batting by accident, it's no big deal. You're just going to lay another piece of batting here and you're going to butt it right up next to the piece of batting that was up here to begin with. Right? That's all you're doing. Because that's how Kim shows us how to do it. She just butts that piece of batting up there. I'm just trying to catch this batting because that one needed to scoot over just a little bit. Alright. So this is my third one. They seem to be lining up pretty nicely. Alright. And then I have this far one to do next. And again, it's doing it in the order that I loaded them up on my screen when I originally loaded a design, loaded another design, loaded the third design, loaded the fourth design. So it's basically how it normally works. It's gonna do the first design you loaded, and then do the second design. It's just, you know, the way the machine operates. Unless you ended up changing the order. Alright, so I'm on this last one. Alright. So there we are, stitching down our batting. The next stitch, it's going to do that 1/4 inch on either side. I'm going to skip that stitch. Alright, and what I'm going to do next is I'm just going to pull my red down, and I'm going to make sure that it's straight. And I have a little bit on each side underneath. And if you want, you can tape it. I think I'm going to hold these as it stitches. And I'm going to do the step number 4 because I'm skipping step number 3 that's going to do the 1/4 inch on all the way around. Only because I still have all these attached. So basically it should be a pretty good straight line that I'm going to be working on. Alright, so here's my first one that it's going to do. But I am going to bring the others down. And we're going to stitch the side seams here. So it's going to tack down a 1/4 inch on each side here. Alright, and it's going to tack down these stitches. Or the fabric around the batting. But it's only going to go down the sides. It's not going to go crossways, right? It's not doing the horizontal line. It's all doing the vertical lines. Okay, so the next one it's going to do is this one. For some reason it didn't catch my bobbin thread there. I'm just going to back it up. Alright. Make sure that... Okay, I can't reach it all the way, so I'm going to pull my hoop up to me. Just so I can slide my hoop out for a minute. And just make sure that my bobbin thread is in there. Sometimes it just doesn't, when I put new bobbins in, sometimes they're wound a little tight. Or when I get close to the end of a bobbin, that it doesn't always pull up the bobbin thread when it starts to stitch. And that's what it just did. So I just wanted to pull a little string off the bobbin and see if we can get it to pop up this time. And there we go. All of us have our little quirks with our machines. You kind of get used to how your machine operates. Alright, so this is the next one it's going to do. Alright, and now I have my last one. Again, I'm just tacking down my red fabric. I'm just trying to show you how I do it. And of course, this is how we're going to do the flange as well. But the flange is so much wider, I usually can only do 2 at a time. So they end up being more hoops, right? Which means I'll be using more stabilizer. Now these aren't as perfect as the ones before, you know, because I am a little bit off down here. But I don't think it's going to matter very much. When it does the design in the middle, it leaves extra on each side of the design. It doesn't completely fill that. So that allows you to kind of shift the fabric when you do your seam allowance a little bit. All right, so I'm going to hit start, and right now it's going to start the quilting on all 4 rows. And when this is done quilting, then we'll be back to look at our inner borders. All right, I just want to show you. This is how they all finished up. So they have all been quilted down except for this little section down here. Now I shouldn't need these. These should all be about 19 inches. All right. Well, I need 2 16.5s and 2 18.5s. So this should be long enough for doing my inner border. So we are done with the inner borders. So the next thing that we'll move on to is actually opening up and cutting our flange and quilting it. So I will be back and we will work on the flange.